true, that he's entitled to react to the way he wants to react, because it's an appalling set of circumstances. It shows us a certain dysfunction in the way this club is behaving at that higher level. I'd love to have been at the press conference yesterday, but obviously we don't get invited as the BBC. Some people on to me said, why weren't the BBC there? We don't get invited to those press conferences, although we interview Brendan Rodgers very generous with his time, pre-match, post-match, around games. So there's a lot of unanswered questions around it, but it was explosive, and I'm not sure Dermot Desmond is going to take too kindly to this, and that's another area, the Dermot Desmond situation. I think Dermot Desmond now has become the number one in terms of Peter Lawwell is always going to be high up on their priority list of people who must leave the club, but Dermot Desmond I think is right up there, if not top of the tree, because he's all powerful.
Before we move on to discuss Aberdeen, really interesting situation in there right now. Let's bring in Willie Miller on this. Remarkable stuff yesterday from the Celtic manager. Willie, do you have sympathy for Brendan Rodgers having to face up to the media and deal with stuff like that?
It's part of the job, Kenny, isn't it? You've got to take the difficult questions. You've got to deal with the difficult circumstances, same way as Russell Martin is trying to deal with the difficult circumstances that he finds himself in. I would say from an outside Old Firm point of view, it's great to see them under this sort of a pressure and having to deal with it, and probably Brendan Rodgers hasn't had to deal with this situation, and let's face it, he's been a hugely successful manager. He's a very intelligent manager. I listened to his press conference as well. What do you take out of it? And what I would say about managers and being close to directors and the executive, that is the case. They are close to certain directors and certain executives, and maybe distant from the ones that don't really wield the power. His problem is that someone is briefing against him, and he's got to find that out. And I would think it's a problem not just for the manager but for the board of directors as well. If it happened the last time he was there and it's happened again, then it's not a great situation to be in. We don't know who that is that's briefing against him, but he obviously has got an indication of who it would be. I would be very surprised if he didn't know who it was, actually, but he really can't come out and say that. Otherwise it would just open up another can of worms. So he's an intelligent manager, he's been a successful manager, he's coming to the end of his contract as well. The way to deal with that is to get a new contract, is it not? And then be fully invested. I agree with listening to his press conference. It was all about, and although he says it wasn't all about him, I felt it was all about him, and he's passionate for Celtic and the fact that he's a supporter, and when he leaves the club he will still be a supporter. He can understand the frustrations that the fans are feeling.
Are you suggesting he milked it a wee bit?
Well, it was a long, it was a long press conference, Tom. I'm sitting there thinking, am I going to be able to get to the ground in time to dial in at 2 o'clock? Thankfully, I did.
Do you know? They're playing Kilmarnock on Sunday, obviously. Do you know one word that wasn't mentioned? Kilmarnock. There was no mention of the game on Sunday. Look, and Rodgers is just presenting one side of the story here. Obviously, they got knocked out by Kairat Almaty. That was on Brendan Rodgers.
Absolutely.
So there's
he did take responsibility for that, though, in the press conference.
He did and he didn't.
Well, he did. You might not agree with how much in detail he went with it, Tom, but he did. He briefly brushed over it, didn't he?
Well, he said we had to be able to do it early, as in transfer business, to bring in players so we were ready for those games, Kairat Almaty, and we weren't ready. We weren't ready.
I don't think anyone, as Tom's kind of alluded to there, is exonerated of blame in this whole situation. They should have done better against Kairat Almaty, and Brendan Rodgers will know that will rumble on throughout the season, regardless of how successful they are, that they aren't competing in the Champions League. I think Brendan Rodgers is using the last year of his contract, in which he will stay unless he's relieved of his duties, because he said he will. I think he's using it as as a way of saying, you know, I'm going to be here for my final year. If I can change things, then great. You know, we can potentially look at extending it. If we don't, I'll leave, having tried everything I possibly can to make changes for what he would deem the better. So I think he's using, you know, his contractual status and his success to his advantage there.
I think what's extraordinary here is that Celtic last season, the Bayern Munich stuff, Celtic finished the season in a really decent place, feeling like they were on the front foot, that they were progressing, and they're now in danger of dynamiting all of that. The transfer policy has been a mess.
They're not in danger. They're not in the Champions League.
Yeah, terrible communications at the club via that very controversial statement. Rodgers now being briefed against. It's if Rangers had anything about them, Rangers could catch Celtic, because Celtic are in multiple areas of
not Hearts.
It's
just Rangers
issues. I think it's a lot to expect. Hearts.
Do you know what? We'll learn a lot from that game at Ibrox today, and you know, there's no doubt the Celtic fans en masse are behind Brendan Rodgers right now. That's tomorrow's game, Kilmarnock against Celtic. Full coverage on Sports. And back to today's action, we got the team news earlier on from Willie. Aberdeen against Livingston. We're about to hear from Jimmy Tilleen, Willie, but given this dreadful run that the club are on in the league, 5 league wins in the last 30, 7 defeats out the last 8.
Yeah.
Is the manager under pressure, in your opinion?
Well, I don't think so, Kenny. It might be strange to hear me say that. You might think that that's a strange situation, but Dave Cormack has made no indication at all that he's under pressure. And he's always, and both of them have always talked in terms of this being a long-term project. Listen, I don't know how much, and Tom maybe's got more information on this than what I have, but I don't know how much that they've spent in a transfer window that's just recently closed, because they don't tell you. It's undisclosed, unless they think that it's a good deal, you know, in terms of Kevin Nisbet being
300 grand.
Yeah, 300 grand. So we'll tell them that, because that sounds good, and it probably won't come back on us, because if it doesn't work out, well, we can say we get a bargain then. Now that's fact, and that's the way they want to play it, which is fair enough. But they've spent a lot of money, and they've built up a really decent and strong pool of players as well. And the last day of the window was sensational for me.
Yeah.
And I think it was sensational for the rest of the Aberdeen fans. Now, I think they were on the same page as me. I watched them last week, Falkirk. They walked out very early, you know, some before the final whistle. As soon as the final whistle went, they were out. Normally they would stay behind, the Red Shed would stay behind and applaud the team. That didn't happen, so the pressure is on, but I think there's new optimism because of these 3 signings, and rightly so. On the plus side, of course, he's still in the League Cup. Yeah, he's got a quarter-final coming up next week. He's got the Scottish Cup sitting in the boardroom. Yeah, the last day of the window was brilliant. As far as the game's concerned, at Tynecastle, they never won at Tynecastle anyway. Did they beat Celtic very often? No. It was 10 men against Falkirk. They were well in control in the first half, lost it in the second half. So I think he needs a little bit of breathing space here. That would be my opinion, and I think it would be the chairman's opinion just at this moment in time. I think he will get the time to turn it round, and I think that he's obviously, it's like every other manager, you're going to get pressure if you don't get results. He needs to get results. I thought last week was a perfect opportunity for him. Surely this week he must be looking at this as he's got to get you know, a win this afternoon against a very dogged Livingston side, who, by the way, they don't win up here either. So it should be straightforward, and we know that football is never straightforward.
Oh, I love that. Right, let's hear from the Aberdeen manager, Jimmy Tilleen. He's been chatting with Tyrone Smith.
Jimmy, a lot of changes to your starting lineup for this one. I guess the 2 eye-catching changes, see Jesper and Kevin come in for a debut start.
Yeah, and even Jamf is coming in now in the league. So no, but I think the performance on the training sessions and the qualities, of course, like individuals around the opponent's box, about finishing and assist. So I think they deserve it in the weeks they've been here now, and the best choice for us today in this game.
It sounds an obvious question, but what do you think Jesper and Kevin will bring to your team, and do you think that's you now got the solution perhaps to the goal-scoring issues they've been this season?
It's also about football is still a team sport, so the team also have to give them opportunities to do their job as good as individuals. So we need to arrive better structured as a team to these situations, but when the situations arrive, they are really good quality in this area. So it's a mix. You're adding more individual quality, but also the team has to give them opportunities to use the individual qualities.
Stuart Armstrong on the bench. It was interesting what you were saying yesterday. Undoubted quality that you've brought in, but certainly in terms of the three new guys, not a lot of game time, recent game time between them. It is about kind of managing them carefully and kind of kid gloves almost, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, but also the quality they have to start